You certainly know this painting. This is the Mona Lisa, the most important work of art of all time. It is considered by many to be the height of perfection in a painting, made using an extremely complex technique. Something practically impossible to be done by a human, but it was done. There was only one man capable of painting something so beautiful and, at the same time, so intriguing. You probably already know his name, Leonardo da Vinci. But what if I told you that this man was capable of doing things far greater than the Mona Lisa? In fact, painting wasn't even his most impressive skill. What if I told you that Leonardo da Vinci also designed bridges? He designed buildings and even, believe it or not, planned an entire city. What if I told you that da Vinci also anticipated several concepts of modern biology, mathematics, and physics? In addition to all of this, he also worked in other arts, being a musician, poet, sculptor, and even a theater director. And as if that weren't enough, he is also known as a pioneer in ballistics and aviation. Leonardo da Vinci is simply incredible. He did things that no other man had ever dared to do. This genius was one of the most important people who ever walked the face of the earth, and we can say that he was capable of doing anything. But how? How did da Vinci do all of this? How did this man change the world he lived in? And what were the most absurd things he did in his lifetime? Today, on Critical Point. If you like this kind of content, make sure to subscribe to the channel to support us in producing this type of video. Leonardo Piero da Vinci is considered the most impressive man in history. This is because he did not limit himself to painting just a few artworks. In fact, this was not even his main activity. For a long time, Leonardo da Vinci was involved in the most diverse areas of society. For this reason, he became known as the ideal archetype of a Renaissance man. Like Galilei or Pythagoras, his skills and his intellect encompassed so many areas that he was considered a true polymath. That is, a person without restriction of knowledge to a single field. For example, a doctor knows only about medicine, an engineer knows only about engineering. But Leonardo da Vinci, my friends, we can say that he was everything at the same time. According to his biographer, Giorgio Vasari, from his earliest years, Leonardo showed great liveliness of spirit, an ability to learn anything, and a natural inclination toward the studies of art and science. But even so, it is incorrect to say that Leonardo da Vinci was an absolute genius, with a talent that appeared out of nowhere, almost like a divine gift. This is because everything I have mentioned so far arose from a combination of very unlikely factors, which resulted in the creation of an untamed genius known in every corner of the world. His genius was inspired by the period in which he lived. And historically, many people believe that if he had not been in the right place at the right time, the world might never have known the name Leonardo da Vinci. Therefore, in order to understand a little more about how Leonardo da Vinci was a genius, we need to take the focus off Leonardo and place a bit more focus on Vinci and the Renaissance. This is the small town of Vinci, an Italian commune that hundreds of years ago belonged to the Kingdom of Florence. For a long time, this region, like all of Europe, found itself practically lost during the Middle Ages. It was nearly 1,000 years of a turbulent period marked by bloodshed, intolerance, and the slow development of forms of knowledge. For time, a new social class began to stand out in the hierarchy, the bourgeoisie, especially in the Italian peninsula, which, thanks to its proximity, played a fundamental role in trade with Eastern peoples. With this growth and, consequently, with this power, the desire to remain at the top also grew. Thus, the bourgeoisie contributed directly to the formation of an intellectually active environment. By investing in knowledge as a way to maintain their power, the bourgeoisie, for example, seeking to increase their profits and their own prestige, invested heavily in improvements in navigation, learning, cartography, mathematics, and astronomy, seeking to maximize artisanal productivity. they invested in engineering and hydraulic techniques. Seeking greater control over finances and business, they developed the use of accounting and algebra. And finally, aiming to integrate even further into the circle of the powerful. The most influential families, such as the House of Medici, sought to develop art as a symbol of social prestige, thus investing in great works of painting, sculpture, and architecture. It was in this way that the world came to know the names of Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Sandro Botticelli, and Raphael. Leonardo was the ultimate example of the so-called universal man of the Renaissance. He moved between art, science, engineering, and philosophy with astonishing ease. And the most impressive part, he recorded practically everything in small notebooks. These notebooks preserve some of the most unbelievable ideas in history. In one of these notes, Leonardo writes something that today seems surreal, a kind of cover letter resume sent to the Duke of Milan, in which he lists everything he was capable of doing. And it was no small list: portable bridges, machines to drain swamps, infiltration tunnels, innovative weapons, war vehicles. And only at the very end he adds, almost as an afterthought, "In times of peace, I am also capable of painting and sculpting." This document is considered by many historians to be the first resume in history. But there's an important detail here. Leonardo's world was anything but peaceful. The Renaissance was underway, but war was still at the center of Italian political life. City-states constantly competed for power, and military engineers were extremely valued. It was in this context that Leonardo designed war machines that seemed like something out of science fiction. Among them was the so-called scythe chariot, a cart equipped with rotating blades designed to charge into enemy troops. He also conceived an armored carriage, basically a 5th-10th century war tank, and even a prototype of a multi-shot weapon, something very close to the concept of a machine gun. But to design all of this, Leonardo needed to understand something fundamental: how projectiles move through the air. And this is where things get even more mind-blowing. By analyzing angle, weight, and force, Leonardo anticipated a concept in physics that would only be formalized centuries later: the independence of motions. In other words, an object can move horizontally and vertically at the same time without one motion interfering with the other. All of this without any formal academic training, and perhaps for safety reasons, Leonardo began writing much of his notebooks in mirror writing from right to left. His texts could only be read using a mirror. But among so many far-fetched ideas, one stands out in particular: the design of an ideal city. Upon arriving in Milan, Leonardo encountered a city devastated by outbreaks of bubonic plague. Observing the urban chaos, he concluded that the problem was not only medical, but architectural. Cities were dirty, disorganized, and unhealthy. Leonardo's solution was radical. He envisioned a city built on 2 levels: an upper level dedicated to social life, and a lower one exclusively for infrastructure. On the upper level, wide streets, shaded sidewalks, and smooth circulation. Underground, water drainage, sewage, cargo transport, and ventilation. It was an attempt to use architecture as a tool for public health. The city was never built, but its principles anticipated modern urban planning concepts applied centuries later. Leonardo also stood out as a cartographer. In 1502, he was given an almost impossible mission: to create a detailed aerial map of the city of Imola. Keep in mind, we're talking about a time with no drones, airplanes, or aerial photography. Using coordinates, a compass, and meticulous measurements, Leonardo produced a map so accurate that it still impresses historians to this day. And the more Leonardo observed the world, the more he wanted to understand it. He studied the movement of water, whirlpools, erosion, sedimentation, and even the hydrological cycle. During expeditions through the mountains of northern Italy, he found marine fossils at high altitudes. While many explained this through the biblical flood, Leonardo reached a different conclusion. Those lands had once been submerged. Without realizing it, he was anticipating fundamental concepts of modern geology. The same happened with physics. In his notebooks, Leonardo writes that a body in motion tends to remain in motion unless something stops it. Centuries later, this would become Newton's first law. But Leonardo was not only an engineer and scientist, he was also responsible for grand theatrical spectacles at the court of Milan. He created movable stage sets, special effects, hydraulic machines, and performances that worked as political propaganda. It was in this context that he designed mechanisms that we now recognize as the first sketches of the helicopter. Fascinated by flight, Leonardo studied birds, insects, and air currents with remarkable precision. He designed flying machines, such as the ornithopter, attempting to replicate the flapping of birds' wings. All of this led him to an even deeper study, the human body. Leonardo carried out dissections in secret, recording muscles, organs, and proportions with a level of detail never seen before. These studies were not only scientific, but also artistic. They culminated in works such as The Last Supper, where Leonardo created something revolutionary, psychological narrative. Each apostle reacts differently to the announcement of the betrayal. Gestures, gazes, and expressions convey real, almost tangible emotions. In the final years of his life, Leonardo moved to France at the invitation of King Francis I. He took with him his notebooks, projects, and some paintings, including the Mona Lisa. He died in 1519, surrounded by ideas that were centuries ahead of his time. Leonardo da Vinci was not just a genius, he was living proof that curiosity, observation, and imagination can expand the limits of what it means to be human. If this video brought more knowledge into your life, subscribe and leave a like. Thanks for watching.